a friend of mine named Dale Shealy found out about 3 weeks ago that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He died a couple days ago. Dale, I've known Dale for a long time. He moved to Phoenix about 17 or 18. I wasn't living there then. I had moved. I'm not sure where I was at. Maybe California then. But he came pretty much to get a job. He moved from Montana by himself. Left his parents in Montana. Came down, met his wife at Burger King where he got his first job. She was his boss. She converted him, and they got married, had a child. He became a deacon, then he became an elder. He was just a good guy, you know. He was just real mellow, very knowledgeable, very, very smart. Maybe not as smart as Bill, but he was smart, you know. I'm just kidding, Bill. But he was a good guy, and you know, it makes me think, you know, when you get older, how fast time goes. I mean, I've got grandchildren, 19 years old now, in college. You know, it's just shocking to me. It's just important for us all to remember that we can go anytime. We have no guarantee. There's nothing tomorrow. There's nothing we have. We only have our Lord and Savior and our salvation. So be thinking about those things. Those are things that we need to be mindful of. Tonight, I just want to talk about maybe 10 things that are like undeniable truths. Something that I think some of these subjects are subjects we don't talk a lot about, and I think some are things that we need to talk more about. First one I want to talk about is honoring your father and mother. The Lord expects us to do that. It's important. Matthew 15:4 talks about we're to honor our mom and dad, and if we don't, there's a price to pay. You know, I'm going to use Bill again. Bill and I are very fortunate in our lives. We have great parents. I mean, Bob, his dad, was in the Air Force in World War II, and he's a no-nonsense guy. My dad was a Marine in World War II at Iwo Jima. He was no nonsense. We both probably, I'm not speaking for him, I know me, we pushed the envelopes on our dads. But my dad didn't have to ask me to do something twice. He was an old Marine, and he meant business. I never saw him argue with my mom. Never saw him ever raise his voice to my mom. He was always that kind of a leader in the house. And, you know, I was a wrestler in high school, and I wasn't very good. I wrestled at 133, and nothing like Bill. I think, what did you wrestle, like 155, something like that? Yeah, but he was a killer kind of guy. I thought I was a killer, you know. What I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a uniform or what. When you get that on and you wrestle, you think you cannot be beat. I don't care if you wrestle 133s or whatever Bill wrestled. You get the confidence that there's nothing that can whip you. And I remember my dad and I being out in the backyard, and he told me one time, "I'll never lose to you." And he meant it. Dad was about 6 foot, weighed 215. And I wrestled him as long as I could until he couldn't breathe anymore, and I couldn't either. And he always won. But the thing I'm trying to get across is that Bill and I had the example of what a father should be. And so did Vicki. Sorry, Vicki, I didn't mean to leave you off, because you saw a lot of your dad, I know. But I've known this family from Phoenix for a long time. Their dad preached where my dad was an elder, and we've known them a long time. We still like each other, so it's good. But it's so important for us all to remember that our parents, or we need to be the parents that our dads and moms were or weren't. Because God expects us to be that way. He expects us to have the family that He wants us to have. And we need to be mindful of that. It doesn't matter what our circumstances are. The truth is, we need to be what He wants us to be, or figure out how to do it. I never wanted to disappoint my dad. And that was a thing for me. And my mom, I just didn't want to, and I never wanted to embarrass my mom. But my dad, just didn't want to lose his respect. I did once. We had a preacher named Harry Pickup Jr. And Harry was, he was at Florida College. He was president of Florida College for a while. And my dad and him had a great relationship. Harry would spend the night at my parents' house when he had a meeting in Phoenix. And they were having a meeting at Monte Vista. And that night I had a date with some girl who became very important in my life and another couple. And I'm choking up thinking about it. I did not make it to that meeting that night. My dad was like livid. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, "Man, you really saddened me tonight." And that crushed me more than the spankings he used to give me, from not behaving myself at church when we got home. So it's just, I'm not sure I ever installed that in my children. I can remember both of my sons taking me to the ground trying to hurt me on several occasions. But I wanted my kids to at least understand how important it is to have a family relationship, and hopefully that they would marry a Christian girl. I know Matthew, he was when he was in high school, he had one of these ridiculously kind of long hair, and it curled in the back because he kind of had curly hair, and he was in the baseball team. He was pretty cool, and I had to put up with that. It's funny still to think of it because he doesn't have hair anymore, and I do, at least two. So, but there was a time, and you kids are like this, but my dad wanted me to go out with Gina sometimes and take her to a nice restaurant instead of Pete's Fish and Chips or some dive. He'd give me $25, say, "Hey, I want you to take her somewhere you should be taking her." Okay. And she always went to church with us on Sunday, so she was used to eating out with us. But there was this girl in Kirkland, Washington, where we were attending at the time. And I taught the high school class, and all these girls came up to me one day and said, "We'd really like to get Matthew to come to Debbie's house because they're going to have a potluck. And we'd really like Matthew to come. Can you get that to happen?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know. I have a hard time telling him to get up in the morning." But so I told him about it, and he goes, "No, Dad, come on. I don't, she's cute and everything, but I don't really want to do that." "Well, here's $50, son. This is if you go." Well, $50 at that time was like $100 now. He went. He married that girl. I have 3 Christian grandchildren from that girl, which all worked out. It may not have been right, but it worked out. And so whatever it takes, I think we got to try. So I know that's a little bit with meaning about bribery, but I wouldn't want you guys to experience that, but it happens, and sometimes it works. The next one I want to talk about is husbands loving your wives. And I know that's not a big deal, maybe, but it's a big deal in life. And it's really simple. The Bible makes it very simple. Ephesians 5:25 says that husbands are to love their wives. And it doesn't say if she's a great cook, a great swimmer. It doesn't say anything about her being good or looking good or anything else. That's your job. I'm always amazed about people who get in trouble with their marriage. And I wonder, did you forget how you got here? Did you forget that Friday night was date night or whatever? But I think most women want to be treated special. And that's the way they're meant to be. And when we don't do our job, we can have problems. But I really think that most of us are working to do that. And we just have to remember that love requires action. It's not just saying I love you. That doesn't work much. They got to see it. And I think most of us know that. I've been married 53 years now, and I sometimes forget to tell my wife I love her, but rarely, because the punishment is not good. She's an easy girl to love. But we need to be mindful of what our responsibilities are as husbands. I won't talk about what women's job is, but it's in there. You know what I'm talking about. It doesn't make anybody's job easy, but God does require certain things of us. And us as fathers and husbands, it requires love. The first lesson that Antoine gave when he got here, not when he interviewed, but his first lesson, I believe, was on one. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. That's what he talked about. He was a math major where he went to school, and he's pretty smart, I think. He reads a lot, I know that. But it's such an easy lesson. Maybe not to give, I'm sure he worked at it, but it's so easy to understand. When you read Ephesians 4 and 4, it's so easy to learn. I just want to read that here real quick. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called in the one hope of your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. One God and Father of all, who is above all and through all, in you all. I mean, that verse just about says it, doesn't it? I mean, there's one faith. There's one God. There's one. You don't get taught that in school anymore. Everybody's okay. We need to be mindful that the Lord's plan is pretty simple. We make it hard. We're the ones that make it hard. We are the ones that have problems with loving our wives and getting along. We're the ones. It's simple if we do what Lord asks us to do. We just have to make ourselves be smart enough to understand what we're supposed to do. This morning, Shannon read the words of the flesh. And I'm not going to read those this morning tonight, because there's some big words there and I don't want to miss them. No, I'm just kidding. But we need to make sure that we understand those words. Because the Lord means what he says. I mean, I think a lot of times people think, or in high school or college or whatever, you get involved in certain things and you forget that God is in charge of everything we do. And sometimes we won't wake up till we get older. I'm not sure if our health is not right or whatever. But you're not in charge here. You're only asked to do certain things. And he means doing it. So we need to play by the rules. And this is not a game, unless you consider life a game. But the Lord expects certain things of us, and not to be involved in other things. We're not to be involved in adultery, fornication, lasciviousness, sorcery, those kinds of deals. That's not for us. And if we don't teach ourselves that, we don't live by that, our kids will not will drop in that. And I think everybody here who's raised kids, and if you haven't, you know you're always about that far away from them falling off the track. And you only got to do one little thing, and they say, oh, mom or dad does that, and so I ought to be able to do this. We need to be careful. God has a plan for us. We know what we're supposed to do. But sometimes we get the idea that we're better or we're smarter, and that's never the case. God expects results. Matthew 25:25, and then 26 and 30. We'll read that real quick here. I don't know how quick I can get over there. I'm getting here. But his Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I have not scattered seed. And moving down to verse 30. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. You know, God expects something out of us. As good as it is to be here tonight, it's not all there is. You know, we do these little cards, hand out little cards, just to have something to do. Because we want to make sure all of us are thinking about that. Because God does expect us to make this congregation grow. We're not expected to stay dormant. We went dormant for a long time here. But 8 years ago, we weren't where we needed to be. 15 years ago, we definitely weren't where we needed to be. Time flies when you're having a good time. But it's important for us to realize that He expects all of us to be working, doing something. So, the elders give you certain things you can do or not do, but you can't blame them someday on Judgment Day. It won't work. Now, He's going to ask the elders what they did to motivate you or try to motivate you or try to provide things for you to do. I believe that. He's going to ask us why we didn't do more to make things bigger and better. But we need to be mindful each of us have a responsibility. And sometimes we go through life and I don't know if I have to do that or not. I don't really want to. I'd rather watch the game. So be thinking about that this week. I can remember when I used to play, I coached a lot of baseball. I had 2 sons, so I coached a lot of baseball. And when we first moved somewhere, when you go somewhere and you sign your kid up and, okay, he's 10 and what do you put him on a team and they don't have a coach and they say, well, have you ever coached? Yeah, okay, I'll coach. So I've coached a lot of baseball and it's been a lot of fun. And it's amazing how the parents are on a team. I didn't have every kid on my team could not hit a home run. In fact, I don't think I had any that could hit it over the fence. It was a 200-foot chain link fence, and they were 9, 10 years old, and they weren't going to hit it over the fence. But we did teach kids to bunt. And if you've ever watched a little, 9 and 10-year-olds play baseball, bunting is a real experience because they forget where to throw the ball. When they do throw the ball, it's over somebody's head, and all of a sudden the kid's he's on third base. There's a lot of things. I think our team, I know on a team in Santa Clara when we played, we were like 16-0 one year. I mean, everybody hated us because we were teaching the kids not to hit home runs, just to bunt. And they didn't like it that we were winning. That's all I would say where we're winning. I remember a guy tried to come over a chain link fence at us one time, and he was not able. He was not going to make it. But it was just how we forget that whatever we do, we got to try to do better, because that's what the Lord's looking for. And if you look at all the examples we have of people in the Old Testament and the New Testament, He didn't ask them for the least they could do. He always telling them to do something. And that's how we have to be. We have to know the Lord expects us to do something. This is kind of simple. I've been watching a lot of news, when my wife's been sick and I've been sitting around waiting and figuring out what to do. I watch the news and people don't know what a woman is anymore, what a guy is. They're talking about pregnant men. I'm thinking, really? They're talking about binary, LGBTQRS, TVV. I don't mean to make light, but I mean it's got to a point where it's almost ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I mean, when somebody who's up for a Supreme Court justice, can't say what a woman is, what is wrong? I mean, there's no God in government anymore. There's no God in school anymore. We've got to be the teachers, because Matthew 19:4 and 5 specifically says God created man and woman. And if you don't know the difference, you've got an IQ of less than 5. So it's a simple thing, but sometimes we don't speak out when things are not right. And I remember sitting in a biology class in high school. I was a junior, and Mr. Finkbein was the teacher. And I was okay in biology. It was okay. I cut up frogs when I had to. So, but Mr. Finkbein made the newspaper. Him and his wife were going to Switzerland for one of the first abortions anybody had ever talked about. And at that time, they didn't call it abortion. I don't know what they called it. They called it getting rid of something. But since they called it abortion, it became abortion and then choice. And it went from killing to abortion to choice. Choice sounds a lot nicer. Abortion is not quite as nice, but still sounds nicer than murder or killing. But we've killed 63 million babies now. And in my generation, that is disgusting. You know, it's just disgusting. And there's some people here my age that we didn't do enough. We have not done enough. We have not spoken out enough. We haven't said how terrible that is, how disgusting it must be. Because it's painful to kill a baby. And they're not just talking about killing babies in the womb anymore. They're talking about killing when they get born. I mean, that's just sickening. None of us should be happy with that. I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. I don't know how we got here. But I remember when I was a junior in high school, I didn't think much about it. Okay, that's what the adults do. Okay. But I've gone through life, and I've written very few letters, but I should be writing more because it is disgusting. And we need to recognize it for what it is. It's not okay. And we didn't say enough. And we can't let other things like maybe transgender things keep going because things are not good that way. We need to be speaking out to stuff. It's not okay for us just to be silent. We are all responsible for our own souls. Philippians 2:12 talks about, you know, you're responsible. You need to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Does that mean that I have to go there with you? Will I be there with you? No, I won't. Thank goodness, I got enough problems. But neither Bill, as good as the wrestler he is, or was, I don't know if he is anymore, but if he was, he can't whip that. There's nobody that can. We're all going to be held accountable. So if you decided you don't want to hand out cards, you don't want to talk to anybody, you don't want to have any classes, you don't want to do anything but be here on a regular basis, which seems to be good enough, and then you get a check mark for that, and we keep attendance to that, and on your attendance says you've got 100% attendance, if that's it, you're probably going to be shocked because that's not going to be good enough. And I know Antoine's already said this more eloquently than me, obviously, but we need to be mindful that we need to work for his good because he demands it. You know, we think, well, maybe he suggests it. No, he didn't suggest anything. I don't think he does. I think he means it. I think he means it like real business. We need to provide for our own family. I remember when my third child was born, and it was a girl. And I can remember holding her, and it hit me. Man, I'm going to be paying for this for a long time. You know, I got to make sure that this goes good. I can remember going home from my office after finding out I was going to be a girl. Just the first day, Gina wanted to go shop at some department store, and we had to get a dozen dresses or something. I remember how many it was, but they were pink. And I was like, oh man, I've done 2 boys. I'm doing 2 boys. I mean, I thought this was going to be a boy. You know, I thought this was going to be another baseball. I don't know anything about softball. What's the Lord thinking? So, but it was at that point in my life when I was holding that little girl, thinking about how expensive that was and how much, I was going to have to take care of that for a long time. But in 1 Timothy 5:8 talks about us, we provide for our own, and if we don't, we are worse than an infidel. That always scared me. I've known about that verse forever. And I've had times in my life where I don't know if I'm going to make the electric payment, which is pretty scary. And I'd had jobs before. I thought, I'll never be like that. I'll never have that kind of challenge because I know how to take care of myself. I'll go get a job anywhere. Well, sometimes things happen kind of weird and you're in trouble. And I didn't want to think about that verse. I didn't want to think about it. Last one I want to talk about is end of the earth. Because I know that kids talk about this all the time. They're talking about it on television all the time, talking about climate change all the time. And hey, I want everybody to understand, I'm a big believer in taking care of my backyard. And I don't think we should be throwing trash. I don't think we should be burning fires in the forest. I think we should be taking care of our environment. But if you think you have anything to do with climate change, you are kidding yourself. If you think you have anything to do with the destruction of this earth, you are you're not reading your Bible. In 2 Peter 3:10, Jesus talks about the end of the earth, and it's going to burn up. You're not going to have anything to do with it. I mean, you can don't throw pop bottles out the car window. That's always a bad deal. That's stupid. But if you think you can have some kind of merit as to help climate change from this earth dissolving itself and the polar bears all dying off, you're kidding yourself. It's nice to think about polar bears, they're cute and everything, but they will kill you. So it's another serious thing that our kids are hearing at school. We hear it all the time. It's like you can't argue climate change, and they'll throw you off the air, or they'll throw you away. You don't have any say of that. It's a given. It's fact. They think they can improve it, but that's because they don't believe in God. And we just have to remember that. Very few people, in school, who believes in God anymore? That's why we're getting a lot of people teaching their kids at home, because you can't live like that. And I did have my kids in public school, but that was a long time ago now. It changed. Things have changed, and it's not up to you. Any of the things I've said tonight, if there's a reason for you, and I'm sure there is, if you've sinned and you need to come forward and repent of that sin. If you haven't been baptized, you need to get taken care of. There's just no other thing to do. The most important thing in your life, if you haven't done it, is being a Christian. Nothing is more important than that. Nothing. So if we can help you in any way, you want to come forward, we'll be standing and singing our song.